October 3rd, 1910, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A bullet rips through Theodore Roosevelt's chest just moments before he's scheduled to deliver a campaign speech. Blood soaks his shirt. His aides urge him to seek medical help. Roosevelt refuses. He walks to the podium, raises his hand to silence the panicked crowd, and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot." Then, with blood spreading across his chest, he proceeds to speak for 90 minutes. This wasn't just physical courage. This was rhetorical mastery in its purest form. Roosevelt understood something most leaders never learn. Respect isn't given, it's commanded through the precise engineering of words, conviction, and character. Today, we dissect exactly how Teddy Roosevelt's verbal tactics created unshakable authority, and how you can deploy them to command respect in any room. Roosevelt's first weapon was radical authenticity. Unlike modern politicians who focus group every syllable, Roosevelt spoke with a voice that was unmistakably his own. Loud, brash, unapologetically energetic. He didn't try to sound like a Harvard professor when he was a rancher from the Dakotas. He didn't soften his New York accent to please Southern voters. He understood that people respect certainty far more than perfection. When he called corrupt politicians malefactors of great wealth, he didn't worry about sounding crude. He worried about being understood. Modern speakers spend hours crafting messages that please everyone. Roosevelt crafted messages that meant something to someone. His authenticity wasn't accidental, it was strategic. He knew that when your words match your lived experience, they carry the weight of truth. Listeners might disagree with you, but they can't dismiss you as a phony. Your takeaway? Before your next important conversation, ask yourself, what do I actually believe about this? Not what you should believe. Not what others expect you to believe, what you actually believe. Then say that, with conviction. Authenticity commands respect because it signals integrity, and integrity is the currency of true authority. His second tactic was concrete, visceral language. Roosevelt didn't speak in abstractions. He didn't say economic inequality is problematic. He said, we must drive the money changers from the temple. He didn't discuss foreign policy challenges. He warned of the poisonous snake of tyranny. Roosevelt understood that the human brain processes images faster than concepts. When he spoke about conservation, he didn't cite statistics about forest depletion. He described the clean, sweet breath of the pines and the roar of the bull elk in the Rocky Mountains. This wasn't poetic flair. It was psychological engineering. Concrete language bypasses intellectual resistance and lands directly in the emotional core. Modern speakers drown in jargon, leveraging synergies, paradigm shifts, strategic realignments. Roosevelt would have called this nonsense. He built his speeches from tangible reality: sweat, blood, dirt, fire. When he challenged America to build the Panama Canal, he didn't discuss engineering logistics. He said, I took the canal zone and let Congress debate. 8 words, concrete action, unmistakable authority. Your takeaway? Replace one abstract term in your next presentation with a physical image. Instead of organizational change, say, the sound of hammers building something new. Watch how it transforms your impact. Roosevelt mastered what rhetoricians call tricolon, the power of 3. Speak softly and carry a big stick. Duty, honor, country. The strenuous life, the square deal, the new nationalism. Why 3 elements? Because the human mind can hold 3 items perfectly. 2 feels incomplete. 4 feels overwhelming. 3 creates natural rhythm and maximum memorability. Roosevelt deployed this constantly. In his famous Man in the Arena speech, he didn't just praise courage, he structured it in 3s. Who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. This wasn't accidental. He understood that triadic structure creates psychological satisfaction. Studies show messages delivered in threes are 80% more likely to be remembered than other patterns. Modern speakers ramble through 10-point plans that vanish from memory before the applause dies. Roosevelt gave people 3 words they carried to their graves. Your takeaway? Structure your next argument around 3 concrete points. Use 3 parallel phrases for your key message. This isn't simplification, it's strategic precision. His 4th weapon was moral framing. Roosevelt never debated policy details without anchoring them in foundational principles. When he broke up monopolies, he didn't argue economic theory. He said, "We stand at Armageddon and we battle for the Lord." He transformed antitrust cases into holy wars for justice. When he championed national parks, he didn't discuss recreation benefits. He spoke of our duty to those who come after us. Roosevelt understood that people don't follow logic, they follow meaning. He reframed every issue around eternal values: courage, duty, honor, stewardship. This created what psychologists call moral elevation, where listeners feel called to something greater than themselves. Modern leaders debate quarterly numbers. Roosevelt debated the soul of a nation. Your takeaway? Before your next negotiation or presentation, identify the core principle at stake. Not the tactical win, but the moral imperative. Frame your position around that truth. When you speak from principle rather than preference, you command respect because you signal that some things matter more than personal gain. Roosevelt also engineered silence as a weapon. Unlike today's rapid-fire communicators who feared dead air, Roosevelt used pauses strategically. After his most powerful statements, he would stop completely, sometimes for 5 full seconds. Watch footage of his speeches. The silence isn't empty, it's where listeners internalize his message. When he declared, "The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena," he didn't rush to explain. He let those words hang in the air. Modern speakers fill every gap with ums and ahs and nervous laughter. Roosevelt understood that silence after a truth bomb forces the audience to participate in the argument. This created what communication experts call cognitive ownership, where listeners adopt your message as their own because they complete the thought in their minds. Your takeaway? After your most important point in your next conversation, stop completely. Count 3 seconds in your head. This isn't awkwardness, it's where persuasion happens. His 5th tactic was handling opposition with unshakable grace. Roosevelt faced vicious criticism. Cartoonists depicted him as a wild animal. Political enemies called him a tyrant. His response wasn't defensiveness, it was elevation. When accused of being power-hungry, he didn't attack his critics. He said, "To announce that there must be no criticism of the president is not only intolerable, but also un-American." He transformed attacks into teaching moments about democratic values. When opponents called his conservation policies extreme, he didn't retreat. He said, "I recognize the right and duty of this generation to develop and use the natural resources of our land, but I do not recognize the right to waste them." Notice how he validated their concern before reframing it. This technique, called steelmanning, builds credibility by showing you understand opposing views better than their advocates do. Modern leaders either ignore criticism or double down with anger. Roosevelt did something revolutionary. He absorbed it, transformed it, and used it to strengthen his position. Your takeaway? When criticized, first acknowledge the valid concern behind the attack, then reframe it around your core principle. This isn't compromise, it's strategic mastery. Roosevelt's physical presence amplified his words. Standing 5'8" in an era of tall leaders, he compensated with explosive energy. His speeches weren't delivered, they were performed. He'd leap onto chairs to be seen. He'd thrust his fist in the air for emphasis. He leaned so far over podiums that aides feared he'd topple. But this wasn't theatricality. It was embodied conviction. Roosevelt understood that credibility comes from alignment between words and body. When he spoke about courage, his posture radiated fearlessness. When he discussed duty, his bearing showed discipline. Modern speakers obsess over vocal tone, while their bodies scream uncertainty. Roosevelt knew that when your physical presence confirms your message, you create what psychologists call congruent authority. Your takeaway? Before your next important conversation, stand like you mean what you say. Shoulders back, eyes direct, voice steady. Your body isn't decoration, it's your first argument. The final element of Roosevelt's mastery was his willingness to be disliked for clarity. He famously said, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles." Roosevelt understood that respect requires the courage to take stands that alienate some to inspire others. When he championed food safety laws after reading about rat droppings in sausage, meat industry executives called him a socialist. He didn't soften his message, he doubled down. Modern leaders hedge with qualifiers, "I think," "maybe," "sort of." Roosevelt spoke in moral absolutes, not because he was certain, but because he respected his audience enough to give them truth without decoration. This created what historians call earned authority, the power that comes from staking your credibility on convictions rather than calculations. Your takeaway? Remove every hedge word from your next important communication. Say, "This is wrong," instead of, "This might be problematic." Say, "We must act," instead of, "We should consider acting." Watch how it transforms your impact. Roosevelt's genius wasn't natural talent. It was disciplined craft. He revised speeches endlessly. He practiced gestures in front of mirrors. He studied Lincoln's cadence and Churchill's rhythm. His verbal tactics weren't accidental. They were engineered for maximum human impact. In our age of social media distractions and perpetual noise, his techniques are more powerful than ever. Radical authenticity cuts through phoniness. Concrete language defeats abstraction. Triadic structure conquers forgetting. Moral framing elevates debates. Strategic silence creates internalization. Graceful opposition handling transforms enemies into allies. Embodied conviction builds trust. These aren't historical relics. They're weapons for anyone who must command respect. The most revolutionary act of communication today isn't adding more words. It's having the courage to stand for something specific. Roosevelt proved that when you strip away hedging, jargon, and people-pleasing, what remains has the power to move nations. He didn't just speak to be heard, he spoke to be followed. He didn't just command respect, he earned it through unwavering clarity about what mattered most. The next time you walk into a room where respect feels scarce, ask yourself, what would Roosevelt cut from this conversation? What concrete image would he use? How would he frame this in terms of duty and honor? When you answer these questions, you don't just honor his legacy, you activate it. Because in a world drowning in noise and nuance, the most powerful thing you can be is clear. And when you achieve that clarity, like Roosevelt bleeding but unbowed in Milwaukee, you won't just be respected, you'll be remembered. You won't just speak, you'll change history. That's the Roosevelt standard. Now go live it.